Jeff took out his smartphone and thrust it into my face. "Look, isn't she cute?" The screen showed a girl in a uniform making a thumbs-up sign. I exclaimed in surprise upon seeing it. Why does Jeff have a photo of this girl? I was confused and my head was in turmoil. "Jeff, that girl." My voice trembled. And as I was about to say something in confusion, Jeff interrupted me and exclaimed, "This girl, she's my daughter." What? I felt like a bomb had been dropped in the midst of my swirling emotions. Unbelievable. How could this be? My thoughts couldn't catch up. Starting today, I'm going to live with my daughter. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce and you can leave. What? Does he even understand what he's saying? I faced Jeff, feeling a rising anger. "I'm okay with divorce, but are you sure?" "Because..." Before I could finish, Jeff's phone rang in his hand. Without excusing himself, he answered the call. It was a notification of his daughter's arrival. While glaring at Jeff's excited back, I pondered the next developments. How should I confront him with the truth in my hands? I had been looked down upon enough. It was time for payback, twice over. He could laugh and be merry, for now. I am Denise Reed, a 36-year-old housewife. Last year, I married Jeff, whom I met through a colleague's introduction. Please, I want you to concentrate on housework for a while after we're newlyweds and support me. Jeff had requested. So, I quit my job as a cram school teacher, leading to my current life. My previous job was so busy that being a housewife felt surprisingly leisurely. Feeling somewhat guilty towards Jeff, I once suggested, maybe I should work until we have kids. But Jeff quickly dismissed the idea. I want to focus on my work. If you start working, you'll eventually ask me to help with the housework, right? I hate that. Indeed, I was handling all the housework. But it wouldn't be the case if we both worked. But, I feel bad having you work all the time. Jeff seemed pleased with himself and smiled. That's right. That's what I want. Being a housewife makes you appreciate me more. You'll come to respect me. If we both work, you'll start demanding your rights, which I don't like. Such passionate words. It's as if you've experienced a working couple's life before. Though I didn't say it out loud, there seemed to be a sting in his words, as if he looked down on housewives. When I looked at Jeff skeptically, he laughed heartily. I had some experiences living with an ex-girlfriend. Don't look at me like that, don't be jealous. I'm all about you now. If you say so. Ah. This hamburger is delicious. Keep making me happy with your cooking. Okay. Fortunately, Jeff's income was just enough for the two of us to live on. Though I felt guilty about not earning, I didn't dislike housework. If he said so, continuing as a housewife wasn't a hardship. After all, if it made him this happy, there was a sense of fulfillment. Thus, I continued my life as a housewife. However, just a few months later, Jeff said something completely opposite to what he had said before. How about returning to work soon? What? But, you wanted me to stay a housewife. Confused by his sudden change of stance, Jeff sighed and said, that was only for the honeymoon period. You must have gotten used to it by now, right? Gotten used to what? As I echoed his words, Jeff narrowed his eyes in annoyance. So, you can balance work and housework now, right? What? Are you saying I should work full-time and still do the housework as before? Of course. I had made you take it easy for a while. What's that supposed to mean? Initially, I thought about how leisurely life as a housewife was. Compared to my full-time job, I had more free time. But it wasn't an easy life. Being a housewife meant no fixed working hours and no fixed days off. Housework is daily, meaning no breaks. While Jeff relaxed on his days off, I was actually busier, cooking his favorite meals and keeping the house clean as he wished. If I ever slacked off, he'd mockingly say. Can't you do it, even as a housewife? I never felt relaxed after getting married. And when I wanted to take a part-time job, you said no. Yeah. Part-time jobs are just for pocket money, right? I can't stand it if housework is neglected because of that. At his unreasonable argument, I was left speechless and frozen. Despite wanting to be a stay-at-home wife for my own convenience, what a situation this has turned into. It's as if I'm nothing but a parasite. Anyway, I've supported you enough until now, so it's about time you start working and pay me back. I couldn't say anything back to Jeff, who stated this as if it were a given. I wasn't happy about just going along with what he said. But considering the future, it became clear that earning my own income was important. Given his attitude, it was only a matter of time before he'd say, "Let's split the living costs." A few days later, I returned to my job as a cram school teacher. I hadn't expected to find employment so quickly. The cram school I had worked at before getting married just happened to be hiring. Fortunately, I was able to secure the job. Bye, teacher. Yes, goodbye. Take care. Returning to work after a long hiatus was tough, but the students were all adorable and gave me a sense of purpose. I teach middle school students. Each of them is working hard to get into their desired high schools for entrance exams. Of course, some students were reluctantly attending cram school just because their parents said so. Those students were especially difficult to teach because they lacked motivation from the start. You know I've said no smartphones during class, right? Amy. I was dealing with the most troublesome student in the cram school at that moment. Amy Manning, a third-year middle school student. When she enrolled, her mother expressed a strong desire for her to get into a good school. However, the student herself was either always napping or on her smartphone, showing no remorse no matter how many times she was warned, which was frustrating. Since you're here, let's work hard together, okay? Amy, with her bright green hair, glanced at me and sneered, as if mocking me. Maybe it's your teaching that's bad? Shouldn't you make the lessons more interesting so I'd want to participate? You have a point. But for that, I need your cooperation, Amy. What? I'm paying, so I'm the customer, right? And you're telling the customer what to do. Despite being over 20 years younger than me, her confidence was astounding. While it was frustrating, her quick rebuttals indicated she was a smart kid. If only she put in the effort, her grades would surely improve. But it's difficult if the student herself has no motivation and seems to enjoy seeing me in trouble, maintaining a smug smile throughout. Eventually, she picked up her belongings and stood up. Are we done with the lecture? Anyway, I've been coming here, so that should be enough. The problem is your teaching method. See ya. I'd leave her alone if I could, but then I'd get complaints from her mother. This is tough. I went home with my head in my hands. The first thing I saw upon returning was Jeff, playing with his smartphone on the sofa. I'm home. When I spoke up, Jeff, without lifting his eyes from his smartphone, let out a disgruntled sound. You're late. I'm starving here. Is dinner not ready yet? I've told you, it's in the fridge. Just warm it up, okay? Why do I have to prepare my own meal when I come back tired from work? What's the point of getting married then? We've had this conversation countless times since I returned to work. Typically, I get home before Jeff, but once or twice a week, he gets home first. Jeff claims he can't cook, so I suggested he could buy some ready-made meals if he couldn't wait, but he refused. You just want to make things easier for yourself, huh? Is that what a wife does? Ah, you used to make an effort during our honeymoon phase. How can you change so much in just a few months? The one who changed first was you. Since I've switched from being a housewife to working full-time, we should be sharing household duties. But when he refuses, I'm left with no choice but to cut corners or overextend myself. For some reason, Jeff can't stand the thought of me cutting corners. As a result, I had no choice but to overextend myself. I'd prepare dinner early in the morning, store it in the fridge, and quickly reheat it upon returning home. Feeling like a slave, yet lacking the energy to argue, I continued to live this way every day. I don't even understand why I didn't consider divorce. Perhaps deep down, I was considering it the moment I decided to return to full-time work. However, without a specific trigger, I couldn't bring myself to take the final step. Then, one day, an incident pushed me over the edge. Jeff came home drunk that day. At least change into your pajamas first. Huh? You're so fussy. That's why you're not good enough for me. What? Oh, come on. As he collapsed onto the bed in his suit, snoring away, his smartphone was still clutched in his hand. I can't just leave it like this. I decided to move his smartphone aside, and just then, a message popped up. Without thinking, I looked at it and was shocked. What's this? I had so much fun today. Next time, let's stay over like old times. The name Samantha suggested she was a woman. From the message, it was clear that Jeff had been out drinking with Samantha that day. A stayover, huh? The mention of like old times meant there had been previous overnight stays. It was too soon to judge based on this alone, but it was enough to suspect infidelity. If Jeff was cheating, I could never forgive him. I decided that if infidelity was confirmed, I would pursue a divorce. Unfortunately, the smartphone was locked, so I couldn't gather more evidence right then. The next day, I hired a detective agency to investigate. The cost was higher than expected, and they said, "We can't guarantee we'll find evidence." But just a few days later, they contacted me with concrete proof. Jeff always goes out drinking with his work colleagues every Wednesday. It seems the detective agency followed him on one of these outings. Initially, Jeff did indeed appear to be drinking with his colleagues as he had said. The meeting with his mistress occurred afterward. Jeff left the drinking party early to meet up with a woman, and they entered a hotel together. After treating me like a slave and doing as he pleased, the revelation that he was also cheating was beyond belief. The moment I realized I had been betrayed by Jeff, I felt a surge of anger far greater than shock or sadness. I would never forgive him. I resolved to get a proper settlement and divorce him. I wanted to confront him with the divorce papers right away, but I waited until everything was in order. After gathering more evidence with a few more requests to the detective agency, I had enough material for a claim for damages and divorce. The only thing left was finding the right moment to bring it up. I continued with the minimal household chores while waiting for the right time. You seem to be in a good mood lately, Denise. It was a morning when we both had the day off. After finishing breakfast and while I was washing the dishes, Jeff, who was relaxing on the sofa, spoke up. Do you think so? I responded nonchalantly, and Jeff nodded. Yeah. You don't suggest ready-made meals anymore, and you've stopped bossing me around. Isn't that great? Jeff probably thought he was complimenting me. He looked at me as if waiting for my reaction, perhaps thinking I would be pleased. I didn't feel flattered at all. Bossing around must refer to the times I asked him to take care of himself. To think he would cheat and still have the audacity to mock me. Or is it my fault for being so looked down upon? The frustration was growing inside me. Jeff came to stand next to me with a smug grin as I continued washing the dishes. If you can handle this much, then we're all set. Set for what? Be happy. We're going to have an addition to the family. What? I stopped washing the dishes and tilted my head, puzzled. I had no idea what he was talking about. Jeff, being a man, couldn't possibly be pregnant. He then took out his smartphone and thrust it into my face. Look, isn't she cute? Displayed on the screen was a girl in a uniform making a thumbs-up sign. I gasped in surprise upon seeing it. Why would Jeff have a photo of this girl? My mind was in turmoil. Jeff, that girl. My voice trembled, and before I could finish, Jeff interrupted me and exclaimed. This girl, she's my daughter. What? I felt as if a bomb had been dropped inside me. The shock was so great that I almost screamed, covering my mouth with my hand. Unbelievable. How could this be happening? My thoughts couldn't catch up. After a few seconds, I managed to muster up the courage to ask Jeff gently. This girl is your daughter. But, you've never been married before, right? Before we got married, we had thoroughly discussed each other's family backgrounds. I had even seen the marital record, and Jeff had no history of divorce. Jeff, however, smiled smugly in response to my confusion. Yeah. I lived with this girl's mother, but never registered the marriage. A hidden child, I guess. Kind of like a celebrity, right? Despite it being nothing to brag about, Jeff proudly told me this. He then continued with even more unbelievable statements. She's going to live with us starting today. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce and you can leave. What? My mouth fell open in disbelief, and I frowned. Does he even realize what he's saying? Suddenly revealing a hidden child and declaring she would live with us, without giving me any choice. This is beyond a joke. I can only think that he's completely taking me for granted. What infuriated me the most was that Jeff thought threatening divorce would make me back down. I faced Jeff, feeling a surge of anger. I'm okay with divorce, but are you sure? Because... Before I could finish, Jeff's phone rang in his hand. Without excusing himself, he answered it. I watched him, glaring. It's my daughter calling. She just arrived. What did you say? Don't look so scared. Come on, let's go and welcome her at the entrance. I followed an excited Jeff to the entrance. Amy. Glad you could make it. I've been waiting. I almost got lost. Geez. Why didn't you come to pick me up? I wanted you to. Sorry. I was just introducing you to my wife, Denise. Look, this is my wife, Denise. Jeff patted my shoulder, tilting his body to present me forward. I made eye contact with the daughter he had been speaking with. She had the same face as the girl in the smartphone photo. Her face, initially filled with a smug smile, suddenly showed scare and opened her eyes wide in surprise, and she exclaimed, pointing at me. You, from cram school. Yes, the daughter Jeff brought home was Amy Manning, a student from the cram school where I work. Seeing Amy's pale face pointing at me, even Jeff seemed to sense something was off. As he looked back and forth between Amy and me, he asked, What's going on? Well, it's just that, this person. While glancing at me warily, Amy rushed over to Jeff. I cut her off with a bright smile, putting all my emotions into it. What a surprise! Who would have thought that Amy was Jeff's daughter? Jeff, surprised that I mentioned Amy by name, opened his mouth in shock. Denise, you know Amy? Know her? Amy is a student at the cram school where I work, aren't you, Amy? Amy shifted her gaze to the floor and responded. Yes. What a coincidence. This must be fate. Jeff laughed carelessly, unaware of everything. We then moved to the living room for a long and important discussion that was about to unfold. The entrance hallway was no place for it. Upon entering the living room, Jeff slumped into the sofa. Well, if you're acquainted, that saves me the trouble of introductions. Oh. And now there's no need for her to go to cram school anymore. She can learn directly from you at home, Denise. Jeff nodded in satisfaction, seemingly in a good mood. Ignoring him, I pulled out several papers from a drawer, documents that would change the course of my life. I marched up to Jeff sitting on the sofa and thrust the papers at him. Huh? What's this? It's a divorce petition. I've already filled out my part, you just need to fill in yours, okay? What? Jeff's voice rose as he snatched the papers from me and stared at them. This is really a divorce petition. Hey. Denise, why would you? Oh, didn't you say it yourself? Have you forgotten? If you don't like living with my daughter, we can get a divorce and you can leave. Jeff was left gaping. I said that, but I meant it as. I never thought you'd actually bring me something like this. Oh, where does that confidence come from? It's not like you're outstanding in looks or income. Not to mention your personality. What did you say? Jeff's face turned red with anger. Since when do you talk like you're so high and mighty? I won't accept it. I don't accept this divorce. But you were the one who proposed divorce first, weren't you? Are you going back on your word? I never said such a thing. Do you have any proof? Unless you recorded it, there's none. Divorce is ridiculous, something neither of us should even be mentioning. My anger flared even more at Jeff's lies, which came as easily as breathing to him. It was outrageous not just to backtrack on his statements, but to deny them entirely. What infuriated me the most was Jeff's belief that even this outrageous claim would be accepted by me. Perhaps the old me would have silently complied with Jeff's wishes without protest. But the current me was different. I had acquired a significant weapon in my hands. I handed that weapon, the papers, to Jeff. I didn't record anything, but I have this. What do you think? What's this? Jeff hesitantly accepted the papers and gasped. Why do you have this? How do you have these photos? I almost laughed at how much I had rattled him. The photos that had Jeff so unsettled were those I obtained from the detective agency, showing him with his mistress. They're quite well taken, aren't they? Don't you think this is sufficient evidence of infidelity? Perfect for a divorce case. No, that. Jeff's eyes darted around frantically. The confidence he had earlier was gone, replaced by the look of a cornered culprit. There's plenty more where that came from. It was quite a hassle to gather them all. Here, Amy, you should take a look too. No, Amy tried to refuse, her face contorting, but when I insisted on showing her the photos, she froze. Mom? She screamed in a cracked voice, looking bewildered. Yes, that's Samantha Manning in the photo. Your mother, Jeff's mistress. Amy stared at the photo with a face close to tears, but then she glared at me and spat out. Don't call my mom an affair partner. Mom and Dad are my parents. It's not strange for them to meet. Jeff was startled by this and quickly agreed. Oh yeah. That's right. Samantha and I are Amy's parents. There's nothing wrong with us meeting. Faced with such evidence, it's astonishing they could say something so absurd. There's no evidence that you and Samantha were ever married. Samantha is a single mother, and you, Jeff, have no history of divorce. Besides, even if you were ex-spouses, it's strange to go to a hotel multiple times without telling your current wife, isn't it? Both Jeff and Amy flinched for a moment at this. However, they quickly tried to defend themselves. The evidence can be proven with a DNA test or whatever. The hotel, it was just because there was nowhere else to meet. Jeff was stammering, somehow managing to keep fabricating lies one after another. Throughout our marriage, he must have continued to lie to me without any remorse, betraying me. Thinking about it makes me feel both pitiful and furious. The only consolation is that I realized this. The thought of spending the rest of my life with Jeff sends shivers down my spine. Well, Samantha probably had no intention of getting back together with you anyway. Huh? How would you know that, Denise? Because... I glanced at Amy, who was silently looking away. Our gazes met, and she awkwardly averted her eyes. Amy told me a while back at the cram school. She said Samantha had a fiancé and they were saving up for their wedding. And to get the money, Amy was planning to draw it from her father. What? Jeff looked back and forth between Amy and me. No, that can't be true, right, Amy? Samantha getting remarried? And trying to take money from me, that's just cruel, isn't it? Well, that's, Amy hesitated, and Jeff, realizing what was happening, became furious. Is that true? Damn it, Samantha. No wonder something felt off when she suddenly asked me to look after Amy for a bit. So, she just dumped her daughter on me because she's getting married and Amy's in the way? No. Dad. Mom wouldn't. How is it not true? Isn't it all the same? That woman, she thought she could get a hefty sum of money by leaving Amy with me for a few months, promising to thank me afterward, all lies. Jeff ranted as if he was the victim, believing he was playing the tragic hero. Enough with the melodrama. And I don't have time for this farce. What Samantha plans to do is none of my business. The issue is, you cheated, Jeff. That's all. I want a divorce and compensation. Please fill out the divorce papers as soon as possible. Wait, Denise. I was deceived too. I had no idea it would come to this. Jeff reached out to me as if pleading, but I quickly brushed his hand away. Disgusting. How much more can he underestimate people? Does he really think such excuses will work? You weren't deceived. You succumbed to your desires and cheated with Samantha. And blinded by money, you took Amy in. That's the truth, isn't it? Even if that's true, there were different intentions. I was deceived. It's hopeless. He can't even admit what he's done. He's beyond saving. I can't deal with this anymore. How about you discuss this with your daughter and ex-girlfriend? It has nothing to do with me, and frankly, I couldn't care less. If you won't proceed with the divorce papers, we'll discuss it later with a lawyer involved. I had already prepared for the divorce, packing only what was necessary. It turned out to be just one carry-on suitcase. Perhaps because I was never allowed to spend money freely during my housewife days, I realized I didn't have many possessions that mattered to me. I grabbed the suitcase and the car keys and hurried to the front door. Hey. Wait, Denise. We're not done talking. Are you really going to abandon me like this? Jeff staggered after me, his words still selfish to the core. In the end, Jeff has always only thought about himself. He told me to become a housewife because he didn't want to do household chores, and when money became an issue, he told me to go back to work. Silently complying with his demands now seems foolish. I should have realized his true nature sooner. Hey. Denise. Just listen to me a bit more. I still have things I want to say. I've said all I need to. I have so much resentment towards you that there's not enough time to express it all, so I'll condense everything and consult with a lawyer. Show some sincerity through the compensation. What? What am I supposed to do about the housework if you're gone? Amy is here starting today, too. Plus, counting on your salary, I went ahead and bought a car. Where am I supposed to get the money for that? It's amazing how even now, he manages to disappoint. You should do the housework yourself. You can cooperate with Amy. And don't count on someone else's money. It's your responsibility to buy a car without consulting me. Don't just dump everything on me. But, although I had protested against Jeff before, I had never been able to retaliate with such vigor until now. Seeing a grown man tear up and slump his shoulders was both pathetic and laughable. From behind such a Jeff, Amy timidly showed her face. Teacher, Dad is reflecting on his actions, so please, calm down and think it over. You're just excited right now. I don't want you to regret it later. Amy wore a fawning smile, something I had never seen from her before. She must have realized the severity of her situation. Her mother is engrossed in a new lover, seemingly unreliable. Her father is incapable of any housework, burdened with car loans, and facing a demand for compensation. No wonder she's trying to get me to stay by any means necessary. It's the first time you've called me teacher. You always just looked at your phone and never even made eye contact with me. Amy, it's going to be tough, but good luck. If it's about your studies, I'm willing to help at the cram school. Oh, but maybe you don't need it anymore. You didn't seem interested, and tutoring fees are quite high, after all. Jeff might not even be able to afford tutoring fees anymore. Despair filled Amy's face. Wait. Please. Take care, then. Ignoring her pleas, I got into my car and left. Later, Jeff and I divorced. Jeff pleaded for reconciliation, claiming he would change and start over, but those words were far too late to be believed. If you keep this up, I'll take the evidence of your affair and go straight to your workplace. Jeff cares a lot about appearances. He absolutely didn't want anyone to know his wife left him due to his infidelity. As expected, Jeff accepted the divorce. Though he initially protested the compensation as too high, he reluctantly agreed in the end. Life after the divorce seemed very difficult for him. Amy apparently couldn't do any housework either, so their meals were entirely prepackaged or processed foods. Cleaning and laundry were thrown like a hot potato game, turning their home into a trash heap. The sink overflowed with dishes, and the trash clogged, causing water to pool. I'll pay, so can you help me out? But who would willingly go to such a place? Why don't you hire a professional service with that money? I kindly suggested just that. As expected, Amy quit the cram school. If she had been serious about her studies, it would have been a pity, but given her attitude during class, it felt like a waste of money, so this was for the best. I continue to work as a tutor, with sincere students and those who are a bit problematic. Yet, there's no one as troublesome as Amy, so lately, my work has been trouble-free. This experience has taught me that when a child has issues, it's often the case that the parents do too. As a tutor facing both children and parents, it's been an insightful lesson. If I ever remarry and become someone's parent, I hope to help my child grow into a respectable adult. At least, I vow not to end up like that family.